Language islands are the best and fastest way to learn to speak a language. You write down everything you want to be able to say in every situation, about every topic, in every interaction and situation you think you will have in the language. And once you've got a list of everything you want to be able to say, you translate it into the language, you create audio files, and you learn those lines that you want to be able to say by reading, listening, repeating, translation, etc. And these sentences should be short, simple, and easy to learn because the goal here is to communicate effectively, right? That's goal number one, to be able to communicate effectively in the language. But if you want to go one step further and you want to get to a C level, even to a higher B2 level, but then to a C1 and eventually to a C2 level, you need to learn fancier vocabulary, you need to learn more advanced sentence structures, longer and complicated sentences. You get the idea. And a lot of people speak like that in real life, in your own language. A lot of people speak in a basic and simple way, but many other people speak in a fancier way, using fancier vocab, more longer and more complex sentences. And for those people, learning simple and basic sentences for language islands can be frustrating because, well, that's not the natural way of speaking for them. And of course, if you try to learn really long and complicated sentences from scratch in the target language, it's going to make things much more difficult. So it doesn't make sense. In the beginning, you should learn short and simple sentences, as many of them as you can, all of the useful sentences that you will need in all the situations you think you will have, and about all the topics that you want to talk about. Short and simple sentences that are flexible and useful and relevant. All right, keep it simple, keep it short, and learn them all. And once you can use them effectively in conversation, you can communicate. Then you can move on to, uh, if you want, learn in a more fancier way, in a more complex and elaborate way. And for that, I'm going to show you a very simple thing you can do. So once you've got your language islands, and they should be at least 1,000 sentences, but if you write a list of several thousand, 2, 3, 5,000 sentences, it's better. Like the more, the better, basically. So a lot of short and simple sentences about many topics is better than much fewer but much longer and more complex sentences because A, they're much more flexible and you get to speak about a lot more things, and B, because they're much easier to learn because they're shorter and more simple, right? But once you've learned them and once you want to uh, get to the next level and speak in a way that's a little bit more advanced, this is what you can do. So you come to ChatGPT or any other AI and you paste your language islands one by one. Like this one is about scuba diving. I go scuba diving with a friend who's a diving instructor, blah, blah, blah. And you use this prompt. Take these language islands and rewrite them using longer and more complex sentences, but in a way that sounds natural. This is important because when I've been experimenting with rewrite these sentences in a C1, C2 level, it will come up with a lot of very weird stuff that no one says in real life, right? So this is the right way of doing it, in my experience. The best results I've got till now have been with this kind of prompt. So specifically telling it not textbook C1, C2 overly fancy stuff because the way you learn the kind of stuff you learn when you're preparing for a C2 exam in a language, it's not the kind of things that you would say in conversation, right? So using longer and more complex sentences in a way that sounds natural, not textbook C1, C2 overly fancy stuff. Each sentence in one line, as always. This is also important. Otherwise, it'll give you a wall of text that's impossible to use as learning materials. And then you just click and get your results. And sometimes it won't be perfect, right? Most likely that it won't be perfect. You'll have to then edit it a little bit, but it will be a good way to get something that then you can use to get a more personalized thing after editing, right? But editing is important. This should be AI is good for uh, generating masses of text, language learning materials, but you should edit it as much as possible to fit your own purposes, right? You make it as personal as possible. Unless AI knows you inside out really well, you want to edit it. All right. Here's your set of language islands. Have you ever been scuba diving before, or is it something you've thought about trying? Yeah, it's pretty good. I don't go all the time, but I enjoy scuba diving whenever I get the chance. One of my close friends is actually a certified diving instructor, which is pretty convenient. You see, these are sentences that sound pretty natural. A native speaker could say this, I think. And if you're not a native speaker of English, you could take your language islands, rewrite them like this, and then learn to use them. Learn to learn these sentences by shadowing them, listening to them, until you learn to speak like this. I haven't done this, by the way, for my English, but you can learn to speak in a much more elaborate way, much more sea level way, if you're not at that level yet, by doing this. And of course, if you're learning some other language like Spanish or French or whatever, you then paste this in your language islands, and you create another version of your language islands. Again, once you've learned them well, the basic ones with short and simple sentences. Again, this is super important. Learn short and simple sentences first, right? Look at this. Your language island should look like this first. Once you're able to talk about whatever hobbies you have using these kind of sentences, then you can do this. Otherwise, don't do that. And yeah, then you can create another version of your language islands that's longer and more complex, and you learn to speak in a much more elaborate way if you want to get to a C level in a language. Once you're this is for like you should already be fluent. This will make you fluent. This will make you proficient, right? Fluent is like B2, maybe C1 ish, but C1, B2, C1, but you're able to speak. That's fluent. There are people who've passed the C1 exam in English here in Spain who can't speak English for some reason because I guess yeah they learn to pass exams but not to speak. So fluent is you're able to communicate effectively and without too much trouble. So this will make you fluent, conversational, and then fluent. This will make you proficient, like actually sound really good in the language, among other things, of course. But yeah, create another version of your language islands with this, and you learn those. Use the translation code and translate them into whatever language you're trying to learn. Well, that you've already learned to speak, but now you're trying to get to a higher level, and you learn this. And this is how you use your language islands to get to a C level. Because I'm making this video because a lot of people ask me these kind of questions, and I thought it'd be useful. And by the way, if you are one of those people who make really long and complicated language islands, like the things that you come up with when you're writing normally, if they look like this, then do it the other way around and make it look like this using AI, right? Or either do it by hand or do it using AI. Like take these language islands and rewrite them using short and simple sentences. And maybe tell it to use A1, A2 language and get something that looks like this. Once you're able to use this kind of sentences in conversation, then learn the fancy stuff. All right. So in the beginning, simplify and shorten and make it as easy as possible. Once you're able to say all of that in conversation, then complicate it nicely and learn to sound fancier in the language.